You are listening to Walking Home from the ICU. We will be exploring how to save and preserve lives in the ICU. All opinions and views shared are unaffiliated with any organization. Today I have Jim and Cheryl on with me. Jim is an ARDS survivor, and we're so excited to hear about his journey. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks.
Jim, can you tell us about your ARDS journey?
Yeah, it started in December 2018. 2018, me and my wife both got sick. She went to the doctor. I didn't at the time. I tried to get over it myself, and it never happened. It got worse, so we went to a local ER and was there for half the day, spent the night there, and then it was beyond what they were capable of, so they sent me to Burlington, a better ER in Burlington, Iowa. And the last thing I actually remember is being wheeled into that ER. Everything else, next thing I can remember, I was waking up about 2 months later in Des Moines, Iowa, in a recovery facility.
Wow. Is that time completely lost to you, or do you have other experiences during that time?
My wife tells me that I was actually awake for the first day or two.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember. No, I don't remember any of it. I think it might be part PTSD. My mind just kind of blanked it out, but it was, I don't remember anything besides waking up. So that's why I have her here to help answer some of the questions of those couple days where I don't remember.
So Cheryl, what was going on during those 2 months?
Well, like you said, he was awake for the first few days in Burlington, but he was just so bad and couldn't get any oxygen levels high enough to maintain that they had to induce a coma. And then they began to do the proning, flipping him back and forth basically every 12 hours. Well, 12 hours on his stomach, 4 hours on his back. The first couple days he was awake before they started the proning and the induction of the coma, but he was just really out of it. I mean, he was just, every bit of his energy was just trying to breathe. His pneumonia was very bad. It was covering pretty much 100% of his lungs.
Yeah, I had double pneumonia, H1N1, which led to the ARDS.
Right. They couldn't identify the influenza A or the H1N1. It took about, 5 weeks before they actually got a test back that confirmed what it was causing all of the illness. They had taken 5 tests before they finally got positive.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a lot of, really didn't know what was going on. They knew that he had developed ARDS. They knew that he had severe pneumonia and that he had something in his system that was knocking him down really hard, but they just couldn't identify it for a long time. We had the disease specialists and every specialist you could think of in the ICU. So once, so he was in Burlington for about 3 weeks, and then our doctor said he was going to be leaving for his rotation, and he said it was a good time to transfer him. And they continued. They didn't prone him anymore, but they started trying to take the sedation off a little bit at a time for a couple hours every day, and trying to get him to wake up, and just a constant battle of trying to get his oxygen levels to a place where they could feel comfortable letting him be awake a little bit, because he was basically, every ounce of his energy was being used on just trying to breathe.
And when he would move, would his oxygen levels go down?
Oh, absolutely. When he would cough, or if they moved him, any movement at all, his oxygen levels would drop. I think the lowest he got was in the 60s.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of sedation, but ARDS can become that one of the big exceptions in which oxygen consumption is really difficult in that situation when he cannot oxygenate his body.
Right.
So
From what I understand, I don't think I would have made it if I wasn't put into the coma, because it was just so bad. And actually, they only gave my wife 30% chance that I was going to make it anyways. So.
Yeah, that's so difficult. Cheryl, what was it like for you to have him in a coma?
It was hard. We just didn't know. More than anything, the hard part was we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if we'd ever wake up again. We didn't know if when he did wake up that what life would be like for him, because they said, there had been he had been deprived oxygen at points. And so they didn't know how it would affect his cognition.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there, they started trying to wake him up. A few times he'd wake up just a little bit, but he didn't know where he was at or what was going on. So it took a good 3 weeks of him waking up a little bit here, a little bit there, before he even realized who he was or who we were. He didn't recognize us. He didn't know where he was at. He was very confused. It was difficult.
Was that stressful for you to see him be so confused?
Oh, it was very stressful. It was scary. It just kind of changes your whole world. We didn't know what was going to happen. I mean,
yeah. And did you know what was going on? As far as, did you know he was going to be delirious? Were you prepared to see him be so?
Yeah. I had done a lot of research. I'm the kind of person that wants to know everything, and I was fortunate with the doctor in Burlington. I told him, tell me everything. I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with, and he was very upfront. I had to fight really hard in Iowa City to get information, and in Des Moines, it was probably one of the worst hospital experiences I've ever had. They didn't keep me informed or anything. I had to just keep fighting for everything. They didn't give him good treatment in Des Moines, as far as I'm concerned. But
that must have been really traumatic for you.
I quit my job and went, and basically I tried to be there as much as I possibly could. I'd come home for a day, go back for 3 or 4 days, and then come back home for a day to kind of check in on the house and the kids.
Wow.
And everything. And yeah.
Jim, what was it like to wake up after all of that?
Well, I had some really good coma dreams, so it was hard for me to wake up. Actually, waking up to me felt like I was waking up in a dream. The reality was more dreamlike to me than my dreams were. It was hard. The first thing I remember was my wife asking me, tell me where I was, asking me if I knew what was, if I understood what she was saying. And at the time I didn't. Yeah, it was tough.
When I had asked the survivor group about their PTSD, you commented that your PTSD came from the disability that followed, not being able to move. Can you tell us what that was like?
Yeah, it was horrible, and I couldn't adjust myself in bed, couldn't sit up, couldn't hold my head up. They'd pull me to a sitting position, and I couldn't even hold my head up from a sitting position. And they'd have to hold me up, so otherwise I'd fall down. And what made it even worse was my cough, because every time I moved, that I would start coughing, and I would cough for an hour and a half straight. My oxygen would just plummet, and it was really a pain especially when I was able to start getting up and trying to walk around. They'd get me up on my feet, and I'd start coughing, and they look at my oxygen, and they say, let's try this again later. So they sit back down. So it took me, I'd say, at least twice as long as normal to get up and moving around. And
you woke up in a long-term care facility, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so you already had a tracheostomy.
Yeah, had the trach.
How long did it take for you to be able to be on your feet or to move your arms?
It took a long time.
I would think maybe up to 4 weeks just to be able to sit up.
Just to sit up, yeah.
And that was with help. And
after he left the long-term care facility, he went to a nursing home. He still wasn't able to walk or anything on his own. It was all mostly using the wheelchair. He didn't really start walking on his own until probably April.
Yeah.
With a walker.
So that was how many months?
April. So then after he woke up, another
5 months from December.
Well, after you woke up they woke you up in February. into February, but it was April before he was able to walk with a walker.
Yeah.
It's about 2 months of,
Yeah.
and that was walking with a walker.
Yeah.
How long were you in the LTAC for?
Let's see. I think it was 5 weeks, 6 weeks. No,
I think
it was 6 weeks.
I think it's 6 weeks. Yeah.
And then how long were you in the nursing home for?
About 5 weeks.
What did that do for you psychologically?
I was scared to come home. I wanted to come home because I was so tired of being cramped up in the hospital, and especially when I was in Des Moines with the winter that we had, I'd look at the news, and we don't have normal winters in Iowa. We have rain turning to ice, turning to snow, and we had that almost every day. And here's Cheryl trying to drive back and forth and everything else. So I was just so desperate to get home. But then I was scared because we have some steps. I didn't know if I'd be able to get up into the house. I didn't know if I was going to be able to, get able to lay down and get back up on my own, get to the bathroom on my own, and on all that stuff. It was scary.
How old were you at the time?
51.
What did it mean for you to lose that kind of independence?
I've always been proud of being able to take care of myself. It was a big step back for me, and it was really hard for me to realize that I couldn't do the simple day-to-day things. It was tough. My wife did a lot. She still does a lot. I'm still in recovery.
Yeah, where are you at now? Do you still have any physical impairments?
Yeah, I'm still on oxygen. My lungs are all scarred up from the ARDS, so they don't inflate and deflate like they're supposed to. Every time I try to do anything physical, I start coughing. Even talking, you can hear me every once in a while. I'll cough.
Mm-hmm.
I really can't do much, and
He's limited as he'll try to walk through like Walmart, and he'll walk maybe halfway through and have to go back and sit down in the car because that's just too much. The physical exertion just wears him out. He's not getting oxygenated, like I can't say it like he's supposed to. Also, his heart rate, when he does do anything physical, his heart rate shoots way up to like in the 140s, 160s. So then
my body's not getting enough.
Yeah,
my body's not giving enough oxygen, so my heart tries to work harder to get that oxygen out to my body.
Wow.
I've been in physical therapy, several physical therapies, since being out, and it's just
not much change.
Not much change at all.
And how long has it been?
Since he went to the hospital, it's been over a year. Since he's woke up and it's been, let's see,
8 months.
8 months. Yeah.
Have you been readmitted to the hospital?
Once.
Yeah, about a month ago, I got sick again, and my wife threatened to call the ambulance if I didn't go to the doctor. So I went because I'm still under the impression, I'll just get over it. My body will heal, but my immune system shot. That's another thing that's happened. So ended up with pneumonia, and I was in the hospital 3 days.
For 3 days?
Yes. And that's when we got there on the drive, I told my wife, if it comes down to it, I'm not sure if I can do this again. If it comes down to it, I didn't know if I could go through the recovery and the coma and everything else. So, and then getting to the hospital, changing into the gown, it all started hitting me. I was very nervous.
What were some of the thoughts going through your head?
Well, I was still struggling with if I was going to fight it or not. Turns out I didn't need to. They just been there a couple days. They pumped me full of antibiotics and for 3 days and let me go with a couple more prescriptions. It's another thing. I got about 20 prescriptions that I got to take.
Well, I'm glad that didn't get any worse.
Yeah, me too.
Do you feel like you have some PTSD from ARDS?
I think so. I haven't been diagnosed. I haven't talked to anybody about it yet. I think my wife does too, because I missed most of it. Like I said, I was asleep. But,
and Cheryl, what were some of the thoughts or feelings that you had driving to the hospital again?
Just, fear, thinking we fought all this and we got there, and were we going to do it again? And, how was I going to do it this time, driving back and forth, and just thinking, what am I going to do if he dies? Just the whole process going through your head again. It's pretty scary. Jim's always been kind of like the main guy in the house. He's taking care of everything for, us. We both worked, but that's just the way our life was. And then it's just, everything's flipped upside down now. And, it's a whole nother world now.
Yeah, we're starting to do more studies on the burden on caregivers after ARDS, because your life does change. How has your life changed since coming home?
Well, everything is, I don't like, he was extremely independent before, we just kind of both did our own things. And now it's, I don't like to be gone for very long, or I need to stop and think when we go to the store, to get in and get out fast so that he's not waiting on me too long. And then trying to find ways to get him out of the house, trying to find ways to help him keep his independence and not be too overbearing on him, but yet trying to keep him from doing things that aren't safe, like going outside and shoveling, or trying to clean off the glass off the windows off of the car when it's 0 degrees out, trying to get him to understand that it's not worth the cost. I'll take care of it. So it's just kind of a lot of roles have shifted, which is fine. It's adjustment. And I think the hardest thing is getting other people outside of our house to understand it. A lot of people, especially his previous employers, they just have this idea that everything was just going to go back to normal, and then, okay, is he ready to come back to work? And when they hear him cough or see how hard he's trying to get through things, they can't understand it, and they're just waiting for him to bounce back, and they can't comprehend what's really going on.
Yeah, and I think even in the medical field, we have some ignorance about the process of recovery.
Yeah.
I know that until I started talking to survivors, when patients rolled out our ICU doors, I had no idea what faced them. And, in Jim's case, moving really affected his oxygenation, so he had to be paralyzed and sedated.
Right.
In some cases, when people have pneumonia and different other situations, when they're on the ventilator, they get sedated.
Right.
And my question is always, was that worth it?
Right.
Jim had one of the strong exceptions for needing sedation.
Right.
But I just think it's so important to explain Jim's perspective, what it was like to not be able to lift your head up and to spend months trying to just be able to be on your feet again.
And thinking that he could just get out of bed. He used to always, I'm leaving, I'm going to the Dairy Queen, and try to slide, thinking he was trying to slide his legs out of the bed to go. And I'm like, you're not going nowhere, dude. You can't walk. Yeah. And he couldn't even swallow. So, it was like, you have to go every single time to have to re-explain. You have to go through the swallow test. You have to learn how to eat and drink again. And so he had to relearn everything. And though his cognition hasn't been impacted severely, it has been impacted because things don't come to him. He was super, super smart with numbers and math, and those things just don't come to him like they used to come. And so that's a challenge.
I have a hard time stringing sentences together. I have a hard time remembering certain words. It's still frustrating. I call it my new normal.
Yeah, he doesn't remember things too. Like when we at Halloween, I was putting the Halloween decorations out and the Christmas decorations out this year, and he's like, "Oh, when did you buy that?" I'm like, "We've had it for several years."
Mhm.
So there's gaps in some of the things he remembers.
Jim, have you gone back to work?
No, they held the job for me as long as they could. There's just no way I can't. I mean, just taking a shower, something as easy as taking a shower, I can get it done. But then I'm in bed with oxygen on, coughing for a half hour, trying to get over that. I just not enough energy to do it.
Yeah.
It was a 45-minute drive each way and a 10-hour drive, 10-hour day.
What was your profession previous to this admission?
I was in sales for like industrial pipe valves and fittings to the industrial market, and HVAC equipment and plumbing supplies. I mean, they did treat me good. They held the job as long. As a matter of fact, I actually told them, it's been over a year since I've worked there, and it's going to be at least another year in the foreseeable future. That's the thing. We really don't know. All I know is I'm not getting better than I am now.
Cheryl, have you gone back to work?
I went back to work part-time. I'm starting to look for a full-time job right now. Actually, I have some interviews coming up this week to start back full-time. But it's within the context of them knowing that it has to be flexible because I need to be able to go to important doctor appointments if necessary or kind of stuff. So, yeah.
So Cheryl, this has impacted your career,
Oh, yeah.
your time, your lifestyle. Do you feel like you have PTSD?
Sometimes I think when people want to talk about it a lot, I mean, I'm fine right now, but I think when I start thinking about it or talking about it, then it does start to get to me. If I start to watch certain TV shows that I watched a lot while he was in the hospital, I think going to hotels is really hard for me because I spent so much time in hotels. The cold weather is a reminder of everything. So there's some, yeah. But I've talked to my doctor about it. I'm on top.
It was hard for her because I had a lot of questions when I woke up, and it was hard for her to talk about it. But she talked about it and answered a lot of my questions. So
I have a background. My degree is in psychology and social work, so I have a lot of background in all of that. So I know what I need to do and what I need to watch for. So that helps.
Yeah, I think we at least I was very unaware of the toll on caregivers afterward. I really just didn't know what the journey was like. And I think because in the ICU, we are disconnected from the life after the ICU, we tend to fail to prepare our patients for what's to come. Do you feel like you were prepared for the journey that waited for you outside of the ICU?
No. I mean, I think more than some other people because I've worked in the system and I've worked with people with disabilities and I helped them find services. So I kind of had some background and information on what might happen, but on a personal level, no.
plus she asked a lot of questions.
I do.
We actually had trouble getting into a
nursing home.
The nursing home for the rest of the recovery because everybody was booked.
And well, they didn't want to take him to this case when they felt that his situation was too difficult for them to manage.
Huh.
Yeah.
Because of the lack of mobility?
Yeah, and oxygen. I mean, when we go to even at the hospital, the LTAC and the nursing home, when he would have a coughing attack, the nurses and the aides would get pretty stressed out because they didn't know what to do or how to handle it. And so a lot of times they would just stop whatever they were doing with him and leave and go, leave and come back in 10 minutes, check on him, come back in 10 minutes, like he's still coughing. And because nobody's really could figure out why he's still coughing and having such long coughing attacks.
Yeah, that was irritating to me because I would try to warn them. They would try to get me up. You need to sit up to eat your lunch. Like I can try, but I'm going to start coughing. Do you want me to choke on my food? No, just give it a try. So I do it. I try, and I start coughing, and then they leave.
Yeah.
It's like, thanks. I told you I was going to cough.
Speaking of eating, how long after you left the hospital were you able to eat?
He was eating while at the LTAC. He'd had to do that before he could leave. So he was eating for a good couple weeks before they released him.
Yeah, I had to start from scratch. I had to start with the waters and then the jellos and the puddings, and then gradually work my way up to real food, and prove that I could do, and took the x-rays while I was chewing and swallowing and all that good stuff. It was, basically from scratch.
Well, I'm so sorry for all that you both have suffered. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Is there anything that you would tell us ICU providers that we should know from your experiences?
From my side of it with the ICU, I felt very good about my ICU doctors and nurses in Burlington and pretty much Iowa City. I think that in Iowa City, there was, since it's a school environment, there wasn't as much communication with me and didn't really want to give me information as much. They tried to just sugarcoat everything. The LTAC, that was probably the most challenging because nobody knew anything. Nobody talked to me. I couldn't get information. I think that is a huge part for families. We need information. We need to know what's going on. We need people to be real with us. And, because I didn't know when we came back we went to a doctor follow-up in Burlington after he'd been released, and they told us that when they released him to the LTAC and then to the nursing home, they had no anticipation of him ever going home. They sent him there thinking that that's where he was going to be for the rest of his life. But they didn't tell me that.
Wow.
So there's just things like that. I feel like, I'm entitled to know, and I should have known, and what else I could do to help. I mean, I really am an advocate for people, so I was able to advocate for myself and for him. But for people that I seen there without an advocate, I felt very bad for them.
Yeah, Jim's very blessed to have you, and vice versa. But that is such a good point that you touch on about educating families and open communication, something for us all to take big notes on.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing from my perspective.
And Jim, what would you have us understand about recovering from a coma?
It's hard work. You gotta start act like a newborn child. You have to prove everything again. And the biggest thing for me is you gotta have communication. They kind of communicated to me pretty well about what it was going to be like when I got home, especially at the nursing home. But when I was in Des Moines, it was very little communication. The doctor was in 5 minutes a week and say, hi, you remember me? Okay, bye. No information. But being in a coma, I wouldn't do it again, I don't think.
Yeah, that's really impacted your life, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. I know these are hard things to talk about, but they're such good points for us as ICU providers to learn from. So thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. If you want to join in on the conversation, leave a voicemail at 801-784-0472 or reach out to me on Twitter.